All right. I love that commercial. I think I say that every single week, and it sounds like it's completely planned, but it's not. But okay, why don't we do our class spotlight now? We've got a rogue. We're going to be talking about rogue this or today. And those of you who might not have checked out the last couple weeks, what we do during these spotlights are we talk about decks, kind of like we always do in Value Town, and then maybe talk about some key cards in each of the decks. And with rogue, for the most part, there's been some tempo rogues too, but mostly Miracle and Quest have been the two decks that have been played, at least since the expansion's been out. So yeah, I just maybe a quick, just a minute or two. Like, what do you guys think of the rogue class right now in the current meta? Saiyan, you want to start off?
I mean, there's little reason to be playing Miracle Rogue over Quest Rogue. Maybe just like the style more, but Quest Rogue overall just seems a lot stronger. And there's recent versions that have been slightly tech to be better against aggressive decks as well. So, in terms of suffering the classic rogue failure where you just get stomped by Pirate Warrior or something like that, there's not really been a good solution to it, but Quest Rogue has maybe a slightly better chance now because of things like the 4-mana Sunwalker card with some of your elementals.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about that card, which is a very interesting addition. How about you, Rat?
Yeah, so Miracle Rogue is probably, even with the Stone Shaper tech, better than Quest Rogue versus aggro.
Yep.
So that'd be one reason why you pick it over Quest Rogue. But the thing is, it's so much worse than Quest Rogue versus control decks or even mid-range decks. I think that's because of the lack of a good win condition coming out of the Miracle Rogue. Like the Leroy combo isn't as potent as it used to be with an increase in taunts across the board.
Yep.
And Arcane Giant just isn't reliable as a win condition versus control. So unless you're trying to get a little bit higher percentage versus aggro and you're okay with the worst percent against control, it doesn't seem like you should be bringing a Miracle Rogue anytime soon. As far as Tempo Rogue goes, a deck that I like and I played before, it's a lot better versus aggro. I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon, but I don't know. Maybe it'll sneak in there. It's interesting because in tournaments, if you bring Rogue, a lot of lineups just ban it.
Yeah.
And if they don't ban it, that means they're probably aggro. And if they're aggro, maybe you just make your Rogue better against aggro, which is the idea behind the Stone Shaper. And then you bring another deck that Control wants to ban, so then they have to choose which deck they want to ban.
I mean, you saw that a lot at DreamHack Austin as well. I think Alan and another person in top 16 brought Miracle Rogue instead of Quest because deck lists weren't revealed in the Swiss rounds. So if they didn't ban the Rogue, then Miracle did a lot better for sure.
Yeah. And well, we can talk about the Miracle first. And my experience, at least, just playing in the lower levels, kind of just to get a feel for what was good, because I knew at the top levels Quest Rogue is just, I think, a lot better. But I think in the lower levels, I felt like there's just so many aggro decks that I was just losing, like match after match after match with Quest, and it was pretty frustrating playing Quest Rogue. So I felt like Miracle was better at the lower ranks, and then as you're ranking up, you kind of flip. If you only want to play Rogue, obviously, you kind of make that flip once the control deck starts showing up a bit more. But why don't we talk about the Miracle deck first, and just some of the key cards, and maybe certain elements of how to play it and things like that. What do you think are some of the big cards?
Well, I love Sherzin. I'm sad that the Rogue Quest. I'm sad that if Quest Rogue didn't exist, Miracle Rogue would probably be played, and Sherzin would be seen more often. But I think that Sherzin's one of my favorite cards. I like the effect in other games as well of bringing it back, and I just love. I don't know. Nothing makes me happier than playing against somebody who plays a spell, then realizes they have to trade their Sherzin, and then plays 3 more spells. They didn't play 4 spells because they didn't trade their shares at the beginning of their turn because they didn't plan out their turn from the start, and then they get punished. I just love it. And I think that the card's kind of skill intensive. It creates another element of play that allows you to add value by saving cards, not because of what they do, but because of what Sherzin does as when it's dormant. So yeah, I really like the card.
Man, when you make mistakes like that, that's game losing, because reviving Sherzin is such a huge part of this deck too. Saiyan, what do you think?
I mean, that's where Miracle Road kind of feels like it stumbles. It's like you have so many things as a new player. Like you see, you have questing, you have Sharezen, you have Gadget, you have so many things that require you to save resources that it's hard to figure out like how the game plan's going to work out, because you might not draw the Gadget, you might not draw the questing, you might not draw like Sharezen. So your game plan changes a lot for Miracle Rogue. It's definitely more dynamic now, especially because you have like hallucinations and swashbucklers. So when you play the deck, it feels different every game almost. You have similar win conditions through questing, through Edwin, and things like that. But you know, it just feels like it doesn't play out to the strict kind of draw your deck, go to Leroy anymore. You do have to elaborate a lot, and that's where like your power cards like Arcane Giant and your Mimic Pod and things that give you steam in the end just kind of round out the deck. So it's not as, you know, dependent on you saving your fuel, because you're going to have some reload here and there.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of relay, like things like hallucination too. I feel like without these type of decks, hallucination probably would not be played at all, and it's kind of a cool card as to what you can get from it a lot of times. But because it plays out differently, I think that's one of the reasons why this type of deck is great for everyone to play. It's definitely much harder. Some people, you know, you'll probably lose a bunch in the beginning when you're first playing this, but after a while, you start to realize, oh wow, this is like a different way. You know, like this is Hearthstone played in a different way, and it's really cool. Just the outcomes are totally, you know, there's a variety of outcomes, which is cool.
And it really is Hearthstone played a lot differently. Like the majority of people I don't think played 2 quested adventurers even from this list. But one thing that's really interesting between like this Miracle Rogue and other Miracle Rogues is that you have you have Vile Spine Slayer, which is an insanely good value card. Yeah. But you, not only just because you want to bring back Sharezen, but just because they kind of made cards that were good at doing this type of thing, like the little pedal guy, the 2/2 that gives you a pedal, Racial Pedal Lasher, like Hallucination, like you said, like Mimic Pod, they give you a ton of cards in your hand without drawing extra cards out of your deck, which creates like a situation for Miracle Rogue now where you have a bunch of cards somehow, but they're not like cards that work to make like Leroy attack your opponent for 30, 3 times with Shadow Step and Cold Blood. They're cards that just like do different various things, sometimes randomly because of hallucination and whatnot, that accomplish like your overall goal, which has been to like bring back Sharezen a bunch of times, or draw a bunch with Gadgetzan and play Arcane Giant, or just like tempo your opponent out on various turns. And it definitely creates a lot of singular games, I'd say. Yeah.
And for those of you listening, just to give a quick rundown of the deck, it's backstabs, counterfeit coins, preps, hallucinations, patches with the swashbuckler, and then Thalanos, Eviscerate, Lasher, Van Cleef, Knives, Mimic Pod, Questing Adventure, SI Agent, Sharezen, Vile Spine Slayer, which I love that card, and then Auctioneer and Arcane Giant to round it off. I think we're gonna do this deck, guys, for Deck of the Week for those, all the patrons listening. I think it's good for everybody to give it a try. And again, as you're getting higher, you're gonna probably start, running into a wall with it. But I think a lot of the folks are generally in the lower range, and we'll have some fun with it. Okay, well, why don't we talk about the Quest Rogue now? Let me bring that up real quick. And the one that we have here is, I think it's Osaka's Quest Rogue.
Zixo.
Is it Zixo? Zixo had Osaka on it. So
we need to be very clear that it's Zixo.
Okay,
that's a joke about how Osaka's.
Oh, is it? Okay, it's Zixo. It's not Osaka's.
They stole it. They made it together, technically.
Okay.
I guess, or something.
And this one is Prep, Shadow Steps, Fireflies, Glacial Shards, Patches, Deckhands, Boar, Cavern Below, Bilefin Tidehunter, the Ferryman, Novice Engineer, Brewmaster, Igneous Elemental, Mimic Pod, Tolvir, Stone Shaper, and Vanish. And it's very similar to the one that's kind of popular, except for there's no backstab. And what's the other thing that's missing here? Something else that's replaced. I forget what it is. Maybe one less Vanish. The one that's kind of like popular, but hasn't been, I guess, had this innovation. But overall, yeah, this one, I think the biggest thing that stands out obviously is the Stone Shaper. So why don't you guys explain that change?
Well, the Stone Shaper has some elemental synergy, and it's really good to just stave off aggro on turn 4 for the 3 mana, or 4 mana 3/5 with Divine Shield and Taunt. It's pretty insane. And even when the quest finishes, if you get it down again, it's still fine. But the upside, I don't think is worth running, say 12-hour Stone Shaper over something like Tar Creeper. If you want to be better against aggro, why not just take the guaranteed 3/5 on turn 3?
Yeah.
And it creates a wall, lets you do other things, and if they're an aggro deck, they have to trade with it anyway. So 3 mana Ascension's not bad. And later on, like when you finish the quest and you play 12-hour later, like it's not guaranteed that you have 2 turns to, like play an elemental and then play 12-hour the next turn, right? So sometimes that's a process as well. So
Yeah,
I think Tar Creeper overall is just more consistent, but it's a card that Sixo and Oskaka were trying out, and it's sometimes hit or miss. Like you draw later on, it's maybe not that great. It's just slamming a Tar Creeper anyway.
I mean, 12-hour Stone Shaper, if it has Divine Shield, which it usually will, and with this deck against control as well, it's a lot better than Tar Creeper in that way. Like it's better.
Why are we talking about this as a control card? I mean, anything you think is a better.
I'm just saying it's better. Like you would just play backstab, right? Like I'm saying, like there's a point at which the anti-aggro card is enough worse against the other decks that you stop playing it. And like that's where backstab is, right? Like we don't want to play backstab. Like I'm not saying this card's better or worse than Tar Creeper. I'm just saying that like it's a spectrum, and that this card's good against aggro. Maybe it's not as good as Tar Creeper, but it's also better than Tar Creeper against control probably. Because if you were just worried about being aggro, you would probably play backstabs. Is what I'm trying to say.
I know what you mean by that.
As far as like there's definitely like when I talked to them and asked them about it, like they said like the 4 mana thing isn't as big of a deal because on turn 4 you're usually not doing as much or whatever, and you can just like drop it. I think it's interesting that I mean like if you want to take a turn off versus aggro, that's the turn you like want to take off, because on turn 2 like sometimes you want a dagger, and on turn 3 you want to use like a South Sea or something, or like a Firefly, and then bounce it back with like a bounce minion. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea to like stop aggro decks. I haven't tried Tar Creeper like Saiyan's suggesting, but the elemental part of this is pretty easy to activate in this deck. I will say that
there's a good number. I mean, there's 2 Fireflies, 2 Glacial Shards, and Igneous Elemental also gives you more Fireflies too. So there is a good number. I've run into one case at least where I didn't play. I didn't have one, and then I had the Stone Shaper, so it kind of sucked. But it's pretty consistent. Other than that, which minion do you find the most common for you, bouncing wise? Like what is the thing that actually triggers the quest for you? Is there any specific one, or is it just like, it's just like whichever one I get first? Because a lot of them are pretty darn good at it.
Against aggro, you just want to bounce Flame Elemental. And that's another thing, like bouncing Firefly will just generate overall like 3 more mana for you to be spending. The Novice Engineer generally is too slow in the fast matchups, but you can bounce Novice pretty consistently against your mid-range to control matchups.
Right.
For Rogue Mirror, you never want to bounce Novice, I think, unless if you're going second, and you can maybe speed up the clock by 1 turn, but generally Novice is not good to bounce in like Rogue Mirror as well.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of similar to like Patron, where it's like I'm not surprised that you have problems with aggro versus aggro decks. Like Patron, everyone played it even though it's below 50% on the ladder, and Quest Rogue is actually the same thing. It's a high percentage of play even though it's below 50%, and it's because it's just a hard deck to play. And choosing what to bounce is like an example. It's very easy for someone to be like, oh, what do I bounce versus X, or aggro? What do I bounce versus control? But a lot of it comes down to your hand composition. Like on average, you don't want to bounce Novice Engineer, like no way. But if your bounce spells in your hand are Shadow Steps, then it becomes much more reasonable to, activate a Novice Engineer 4 times, as opposed to like if you have to use it with like a Brewmaster, because Brewmaster costs 2 mana. So then it's like, it really comes down to your hand composition pretty often, but generally Saiyan's definitely right. The Novice Engineer is just not quick enough against aggro, especially if you have to use if you have to use 2 bounce guys, like you're done. Like there's just no way. Like maybe if you get to play a Novice Engineer Shadow Step it twice, and then like get a Glacial Shard in there or something, and then like play like the other Novice Engineer that you drew or something. Like it's just, it definitely depends on your hand texture for sure. But
And you're mulliganing for the bounces for the most part. What are you looking for?
Against, if you're playing against like a really aggressive decks like Pirate Warrior, Aggro Druid, I think your best keeps are just finding the South Sea deckhand. Is like the #1 priority. Potentially you could keep a 2-mana bounce, but something like Glacial Shard and Firefly are fine in that matchup. You don't have backstab, so it's really just about the 1-drops that help you contest early on, because the bounce plan doesn't come in effect until you start stabilizing a little bit.
Right.
You could have some insane hand where you could have like 2 Shadow Steps and you're just looking for 1 bounce effect, then that's fine. Then you can bounce whatever you find. Like if you're really high on the low cost bounce effects, then it's okay against aggro. But for the most part, you just want to fight for board early on. Like half the time you're playing Firefly instead of Quest on turn 1.
Right. That's
which a deck with Igneous
right
Elemental does better than a deck without Igneous Elemental, because you don't need to ever bounce the Firefly, so you can just like save the little 1/2s
just play
until
naturally.
you play the quest
Yeah,
and then play them all. Yeah.
So
So
you don't
use
need to
your
bounce
mana
them
more efficiently on minions, basically.
Your curve against aggro is just like Firefly on 1, turn 2 Dagger, turn 3 Igneous, and then maybe like turn 5 you start playing Quest and flooding.
Right.
After you stabilize a bit, because then at that point they know you have the mana, so like maybe they'll choose not to play around prep. You might not have prep, and then you get a little bit punished. But if you go for it, then that they have to play around it. So like the things on board even buy you some extra health.
Yeah, we're focusing a lot, guys, on the aggro matchup because that's the matchup that this loses to. This almost doesn't lose to anything else. So
Once you
that's the
start
biggest thing.
adding the Igneous Elementals, you have so many minions versus control. Like
Right.
it's tough to like get outvalued in that matchup. Like you can see it happen, but it's something that A, doesn't happen very often. B, it'll probably be because you overextended into a brawl or something. Like you'll very readily understand why you lost against control. Usually when you lose against control, yeah. And because it's had, like I said, the Bile Fins are 2 5/5s, and it also has the Igneous Elemental. You just have so many 5/5s.
Yeah, not to mention 5/5s that just hit you in the face when they're played too. So Vanish can really kill you quick too. All right.
One of the interesting things I found was when you play Mimic Pot on curve, it's one of the highest win rate cards in the deck.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that they don't want to play Tar Creeper.
That's a good point.
Because they want to use the 3 mana up on turn 3. And then Tolvir. But if you Mimic Pot, obviously you can't play Tolvir, so.
But you're not playing Mimic Pot against aggro, right? I mean, that's only against slower decks. On curve?
Yeah. It's if you stabilize on turn 1 and 2.
Stabilize,
Okay,
but
sure.
you might have to do it. Like
That's
if
fair.
you Mimic Pot into 2/2/1s that have charge, that's not that bad. It lets you complete your quest. It lets you deal with the board. Like Mimic Pot, it instead of drawing your 2 cards, it gives you 2 of the same cards, which in this deck means that it just completes your quest that much more often because you just get 2 of the same card. And you need to play 4 of the same card to complete your quest,
Right.
So it just lets you shape your game plan into something that's a lot more efficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I don't. Is there any other last maybe comments about just Rogue or this deck? And otherwise, we can move on to some events that have been going on. Anything?
I'm happy that Tempo Rogue with Finja is not good.
Oh God. Yes, that deck was obviously doing super well until the expansion. Speaking of Finja decks, I was playing some Druid again, or at least not again, but playing some Druid with Finja, which is something I hadn't played in forever since me and Purple first talked about Finja decks and things. And it's pretty good, man. Mixing some of the egg with the Finja. I don't know if you guys ever tried that.
I play a lot of aggro Druid.
Yeah, put the water package in that. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the aggro Druids do play the Finja package. They're kind of straying away from it now because I think they're actually going to come back to it soon here. But this is like a little bit circular with the Druid deck where like the Murloc package isn't that great versus control. Like Vicious Fledgling is really popular right now.
Yeah.
And when that card goes unanswered, it just blows you out.
Just keeps
And it goes unanswered pretty often, and which is like nothing's more depressing than your druid
It
opponent
is the
innovating
card.
a Vicious Fledgling. Like it feels even worse than Finja because there's like you get some hope there. Like Finja, you're like, okay, well I can't play a minion, or I have to play a minion, and I know exactly what's gonna happen. I'm gonna get wrecked. But like with Vicious Fledgling, you're like they integrated out. You're like, okay, well maybe it won't get Wind Fury, but then it does. And then you're like, okay, well, it's only a 3/3, and then it gets like 3 health, and you're like, well, geez.
It's like a freaking hyena all of a sudden. They're like these key cards with most of the classes now that just break your heart when you can't remove those minions on that turn. Whether it's Quest Adventure or Hyena or Vicious Fledgling. It's so funny. Yeah.
Which I really don't like as like a general thing. Like it's one thing when you can save. Like it's one thing when you're like, okay, well Tyrion's what beats me, or Rag Lightlord is what beats me, so I'm gonna save my removal that I've accumulated over the first 8 turns of the game. I'm gonna save it for this minion that comes out on turn 8. But when the minion you have to remove, otherwise you lose, is early in the game, like Undertaker, for instance, was, then it's like, well, actually, I could have gotten a Wrath, but I didn't, and now we're here.
Right. All right, well, why don't we move on, talk some EU versus China. Have you guys been watching the event much this week?
It's on at like a super early time.
I know, it's really.
I think Rat's definitely caught more of it than I have.
Okay.
I haven't.
You haven't?
I'm up, and I don't even sleep. So.
It's been pretty good. I haven't caught, I wouldn't say like, I missed the beginning of it obviously every day, but I've been able to catch the last few. We've got random noises today on the show, but cats are obviously a bonus though. Definitely a bonus. Overall, I feel like the community has been loving the event. Production seems to have elements to it that we haven't seen in other events, including HCT events. Things being
the production is great.
Yeah, things being like progress on the quests. They show those things for each players, like on the overlays. Cards.
They've got yaw counters. They got how many cards left in the deck. The mana curve shows the amount of spells versus minions, and they do like these really cool poses as well. And
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's like above and beyond in terms of production. It's pretty insane.
It's a very I would say Asian approach to the production. Like if anyone watched the OGN back in the day, they did a lot of this stuff too. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And it's something that we tend not to favor in our production, not because we hadn't thought of it necessarily, but because we kind of like the cleaner. Intuitively, we like the cleaner view, but maybe it's something that we should consider, like the Yogg counter, those types of things, like all the extra things. But you have to draw the line somewhere, I think. Well, I definitely like seeing it. It's interesting to see it for the first time, right?
Well, I think I kind of agree with you with the whole cleaner type of view. I mean, I think generally speaking, when you're talking about overlays and spectator, you do want just the minimal amount of information given to the audience. But I think the minimal amount of information given to the audience is not there yet. Like we're not giving enough information. So the casters, there's so much stress on the casters, and people blame them for things sometimes. And it honestly, like I feel like they're having to take on way much of the load than they should be. And so things like, having these counters all visible to the audience, it allows you to kind of create or figure out what the setup is right now, and just like maybe what the crazy epic things are about to happen are. So I feel like much more of this is needed in a lot of the Blizzard productions too. So hopefully they learn from that. And I wonder how they're doing it too. Like, is it a lot of that coming from the log file, or some of these things actually manually being kept track of, and
manually.
You think it's manually? Oh god.
I mean, even with the last prelims, or not prelims, but the Bahamas production, for instance, was obviously really good. And like anybody who's like trying to slight the other production, like the Bahamas production was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they had like the interviews with Frozen, and they were like interlacing them within his game. That's not easy to get all those interviews and get them packaged and deliver them to you like that so readily. Like that's
cool.
That's the next level. Like that's the next level of production that we're gonna reach when we start hiring. Like when Blizzard starts hiring these bigger companies, like you're gonna get those interviews interlaced and transitioned with like times where it's happening. Like not necessarily the little listen-ins that no one really is a huge fan of, but so. there's definitely some production things that
The listen-ins?
We're really
People aren't a
good
fan of
with
the
the-
listen-ins?
I mean, like
listen-ins?
not the listen-ins at like the ESL, like the team
Oh,
tournament.
I was gonna
but
say,
mean,
people
like,
love
the
that.
listen-ins, like when they show a clip of like Amnesia talking about why he keeps.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Those are hard to time too. Like you're waiting for the game to actually make this something that you can use, right? It can be a challenge from that standpoint. But yeah, anyway,
so
the point is that the EU versus China, like the production.
Yeah, I
is
think
really,
the
really
production
good.
is really good. I'm definitely interested to see what things we take from that. But usually, like, there's been other tournaments with that before, like I said, and we just haven't adopted some of the.
Well, there have been a lot of
but-
things that I feel like, even just one little thing I have to say about the EU versus China that I did a long time ago with Deck Wars, which was you talk about the decks. Like you actually show the decks that the two players are playing beforehand so that the audience can absorb just what the decks look like instead of literally seeing them come, into their hands. And then you can, again, you can kind of formulate what the key moments can be like in that matchup. So I think they're not putting the decks right next to each other. They have key cards, I think, listed one at a time. But things like that, we should be doing that. We don't have to have like the 20 seconds of caster because there's too much talk stone. Like you can actually do it.
They
in a high
usually try to
production.
draw parallels as well, right?
Which, to be
Yeah.
clear,
Mhm.
it's not like we weren't aware of that. They have actively made the decision not to give deck lists or not give the cards in the decks. Like this has come up before, and they've said that they've decided not
But
to.
why? I mean, everybody
Yeah,
knows
well,
each other's
that's what I'm saying.
decks.
The
It's
question
just
is
kind
why,
of-
right?
Yeah,
Like, the
that's
question
the
is-
point.
But they actually think that it doesn't add to the broadcast as much as it takes away from like the excitement of like not expecting or something. Which I've always argued.
Yeah, I don't agree with
is
that.
like parlor tricks.
Yep.
Versus like having people actually interested in the competition, and that these two players, it's a 1v1 game. So instead of having them interested in the competition, we have them interested in like, like I said, parlor tricks or something. Like, oh, we didn't know that Black Knight was in his deck. Oh.
Right.
You'd rather be surprised by the Harrison Jones top deck, I guess.
I guess, but it doesn't make sense
fair.
because a lot of times the casters allude to it anyways. When there's like, oh yeah, one of the changes they made here was this, that, they're having to basically tell us some of the unique aspects to their deck already. So you might as well just show it to them so that we have full information and can frame it ourselves. So, yeah, anyways, that was just a little comment on that. Overall, I think the event's been great. Firebat and I think Soleil have been doing a good job, even though at times they sound a little tired given that the hours are just really, really bad for them. But I think the community's been loving it. Okay, Q&A, guys. Just kind of wrap things up with Q&A. We got a couple questions, emailed questions. Ahmed, who's our regular, asked if we could rank the quests in terms of what we think is the funnest design in terms of objective and payoffs. So if we were to rank all 9 of them, how would we rank them from, I guess, the best to the worst?
Fun for who?
I mean, just for us, just whatever.
Just the player of the opponent.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with number 1. Like, what's the most fun quest for you guys right now or you think is the most fun design in terms of objective and payoffs? For me, what are the choices? I'm having to remember.
Like,
them.
I'm thinking about
I don't even
it,
play
I'm
the
like,
quest
well,
that
there's
much anymore.
There's
Yeah.
Quest Warrior and there's Quest Rogue,
Yeah.
but those aren't fun. And then I'm like, Jungle Giants isn't a thing. Awaken the Makers isn't a thing.
It's got to be the Warlock quest. Like, Lakari Sacrifice, there's so many cool things you could do with it if the game went long. Like, the 3/2s, they're demons. You could buff them. You
Really?
Could do
Oh, it's your choice.
crazy
Wow.
things with... Actually, it doesn't work with Argus as well because they spawn on either side, right?
I think time.
Lakari Sacrifice is
Yeah.
so bad.
But it's such a grindy
The
card.
keyword
It's
is
great.
fun.
And
It
you
has,
can, like,
it has such
Keyword's
a
fun.
terrible inherent concept. But it's not fun if you can't ever complete it, man.
you can
like-
not run any discard effects and just Deathwing your hand.
Oh.
Yeah,
And then-
Deathwing is the
and
way
then
to go.
You
That's
get the
what I've been
Lakari
saying.
Sacrifice.
Honestly,
That's
I don't
right.
think that seems
There's-
more reasonable than anything else. Like the
Yeah.
problem with making the discard build is that you discard the other cards that discard eventually.
Right.
Like you're going to be discarding cards that discard, and you need to discard a lot.
Well, that's why you have
And
to have the
if you
the,
discard
2/2.
and you don't even have
Yeah.
cards in your hand, it doesn't even count. Which
Yeah.
is
That's
like,
why it's a fun quest. It's like you get to see if you're going to complete it one of these times, you know?
Well, it's all
Like,
these.
oh man, I
conflicting-
discarded my last discard
I
effect.
know. There's all these conflicting concepts that are going on when you're talking about trying to
Yeah.
complete that quest, and that's what I've always said. Saying is that Deathwing just nice and simple. Can complete the quest with 1 card, Easy peasy.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, it's
Nothing like
the
infinite value after we
God,
play.
I'm having like a total brain fart. The mage one, the time warp one, the
Time warp was great. Yeah.
what is it called? What's the mage one? Oh my God, I suck at
Open
shooting
the way
showdown.
gate.
Open
I
the
mean,
way gate. There you go.
I think
that
open
one's
way gate is probably the funnest for me to play.
Yeah.
But it's probably the least fun for my opponents to play against. It's probably even less fun.
Who cares
than
about what my opponent?
Quest Rogue.
I don't really care about my opponent. I just care about how much fun I'm having, right? Okay, so
I mean, it's pretty good that Open the Way Gate isn't like tier 1. Otherwise, it'd be like way too aggressive on control. It'd be another quest rogue all over again.
Yeah. I mean, it's already very, very close, I feel like, to being broken. I mean, I think generally the Time Warp is a freaking crazy broken card, but it's like this close from actually breaking meta, I think. So they have to be super careful with it. Yeah, so ranking all 9, I'd say the best is that I'd probably just do like the best 2 and maybe the worst 2. It's hard for me to actually really rank them. So best 2 is probably that one, and man, I mean the Druid one's pretty fun. It's hard as heck to actually, I mean, it's not good in the metagame right now, but it's kind of fun.
I haven't seen anyone be happy about the Druid one.
Really?
I've seen it twice.
I've
seen it get played twice.
It's just Aviana, basically.
I was watching Oskaka's stream yesterday. His opponent played it in the first round of the Open. And that's only the second time I'd ever seen the card. The other time I seen it was when I ran into my friend in real life. He was playing it. Like, I'd never see Jungle Giants. His opponent played it, and his opponent came into the chat later on. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a streamer, man." And he's like, "Sweet." And then his chat was like, "Yeah, he just started playing recently." He's like, "Oh, so did I." And he's like, "I really like my decks. I think they're pretty creative."
Nice.
And like, obviously they're like memeing the guy because Oskaka's world champion. You know?
Right. All right, what's your second favorite then? Both of you. You guys.
It's just
Mage is probably up there for me.
I like
definitely.
the Mage quest, I guess.
Yeah,
Honestly,
Mage.
if I'm being honest, I think they're all, to be a complete negative Nancy here, I think they're all horribly designed. And I would have liked if I felt more accomplished when I completed my quest. I don't feel accomplished when I completed my quest.
Well, it's funny with the quest. It's funny with the quests because I'm kind of happy and sad at the same time about how they're designed. I'm happy because they're not too powerful. One thing that we were worried about, even Rat, when you were on the show before the expansion, was that these quests would just dictate what was good. Everybody would just literally build whatever finished the quest, and we're playing like 9 classes, and it'd be boring.
We currently live in that world, though. Like, the meta is extremely defined by Quest Rogue. Like,
no, but that's just one quest. I'm talking about, but still, that's just okay. That's one quest. It's like there's been 2 viable quests, right? The Warrior one and the Rogue one. But the 7 other ones have been not, in contention at all. And
yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? They're either going to be really good or just, like, awful.
Right.
Like the
so
argument.
I'm happy that there is a mixture of, some of the quests. Some of these quests were meant for more, casual players or low-level players.
For sure.
And I'm happy about that they designed them that way, is all I'm saying. I mean, the Hunter, how wrong could some people have been about the Hunter, which is hilarious. So overall, I think it's mission accomplished. I feel like some of these quests may come into viability once the next expansion's out. And
that part's interesting for me.
Yeah, that might change my views on things. But yeah, even when I was playing, Kazakus, the Kazakus, a priest in Wild. I wasn't even playing quests in that, which is pretty crazy. So, yeah, some of these, it's going to take a lot, I think, for it to become
Quest Rogue might be my favorite, actually. I think the Rogue Quest is my favorite. I really like playing the Rogue deck.
Now you like it. Wow.
I think you just like winning at this point.
Yeah, well,
What's
that's
fun about
exactly
the
where I'm about
Rogue
to go.
Quest?
I really like the idea of almost dying to an aggro player, but then making 9 5/5s over like 2 turns, and then like just keep trading down. It's like they came this close to beating you, but then you stop them, and then every minion they play just gets annihilated, and then you just end up like 25ing them in 1 turn. And it feels very rewarding to just barely live against aggro. So I guess
It's definitely the hardest quest to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and yeah.
Like, you only feel like it's rewarding because it's actually hard to navigate, right? Like
Yeah.
it's compared to like Taunt Warrior, like yeah, I can play 7 taunts. Probably anyone
That's
can play
pretty
7
hard,
It's
taunts.
very similar. It's very similar to Patron in the way
Yeah.
that like when it works out and you get to Death Spite and to Inner Rage into Patron and your opponent doesn't have anything, it's very easy to win. It's very easy to win if I just complete my rogue quest and spam the board. But usually in high level play, the other players you're playing against are good enough that they don't let that happen. Like because
Yeah, you're right.
worse players make less optimal decisions, the games last longer on average usually. So that just means that something like the quest becomes more potent, I guess.
Yeah.
It's in the way that it can win when it just doesn't do anything. Like,
All right, so let's pick the worst quests. My least favorite quest is the Paladin one by far. I don't even think I've seen it yet. I've even seen one person play it. I mean, obviously never got, just pulled it off. But I barely ever see that quest. So I don't know. Overall, I just think I don't really love how it's designed. I know some people have liked it because it's kind of like the pants design or whatnot. But I don't know. For me, it's just kind of like, Hearthstone's made so that we can deal with any one single big minion, and it was never going to be that strong. And I don't think that's the kind of quest that gets stronger as more cards come out either.
I mean, I could definitely print a card that makes that quest.
I mean, come on. That not
if they brought down
the
if they brought down the mana cost on the Murloc guy, the Primal Champion, and made him like a 1/1, it might already be good enough, honestly. If that guy's just really good, he just costs a little bit too much mana.
The guy that gives you copy, right, of whatever you play on him. He's definitely good. And to be honest, that quest would not even be doable without that guy. I mean, he's like literally, right? He copies all your buff cards, so there's no way like you can draw that much and put that many crappy ass buffs in your hand to pull it off. Sayin, what do you think of that quest?
I think that quest is a very valuable lesson to Hearthstone. It teaches you things about compromise. Like you can't go all in on just Primal Fin and buffs because it never works.
Yeah.
You can't run like all the bad buffs, otherwise your deck is bad most of the time. So you have to end up running like Valley buff cards like Kings and things like that, and you have to compromise because you're going to finish the quest later, and then you end up playing this mid-range deck with Galvadon, and you're like, okay, well I might as well just play mid-range Paladin. Then you're compromising to the max, and you're like, okay, I might as well play like this kind of Murloc Paladin instead.
Right.
So you kind of get there in the end, but it's like there are points in your deck building where you kind of learn a lot about how this card actually works.
Yeah.
Hi, JustSaiyan. I just recently started Hearthstone. I've been playing for about a month. I've been wondering how to build decks. Do you have any pointers for someone like me? And then he's just like trying to make a successful Quest Paladin deck. And then that guy just like spends like 3 weeks trying to make a successful Quest Paladin deck. And at the end of it, instead, he ends up figuring out how to build like the perfect druid deck or something.
I mean, it's a Miyagi thing, right?
It is. It's an important. I think you're absolutely right about that. So yeah, for me, Paladin and God, what are the other choices, man?
The worst quest for me is the Warlock quest by far.
I don't like the Warlock quest either.
It baits people. Like I have 3 friends who play in real life. We used to play Yu-Gi-Oh, and they all crafted it. And they were like, wow, this quest is going to be sweet. And I was like, no, it's bad. And they were like, nah. And I was like, no, trust me, it's not going to be good. And they were like, nah, this can't be bad. And then they like all crafted it. And then they were all like, wow, we're so dumb. We all wasted 1,600 dust on this card.
It can be good, though. I still think Lakari Sacrifice can be good with another expansion. I just think right now it's like, man, I'm really gonna have to navigate and jump through all these stupid hoops, and I can just play, Murloc Paladin, or Murloc something.
It's just
you can add more clutch mothers.
Why not?
Like if you tone down the power of Quest Rogue in the next expansion, and you give Warlock like maybe one more good discard effect, suddenly, man, Lakari Sacrifice, it'll be there.
You want to make Lakari Sacrifice good? Give them a 2-mana card that says, when this card is discarded, add it back to your hand, and when it's played, discard a card.
I mean, you'd have to make it an epic instead.
You have to make Clutch Mother even.
Yeah, you have to make Clutch Mother an epic. I think
like
that
Clutch Mother
smart.
also has to discard itself. Like Clutch Mother needs to also discard.
You don't have to discard itself. I think it's fine the way it is. I think that recycling is super important because otherwise you're going to be killing yourself and discard. There's that whole conflicting thing where you don't want to discard stuff, but you have to discard stuff for this to happen. It's
if
so
they ever
crazy.
took away random discard and made it like chosen discard, then maybe because you can just discard
that's
the
kinda
Clutch Mother a bunch, but then that's like a really sketchy
That's
territory.
powerful.
So you can start doing
Yeah.
some OP stuff. Yeah.
That's crazy powerful. Yeah, but it's possible. I've still yet to see the portal. Have you guys run into anybody with the portal? I've never run into anybody with the portal.
I seen it one time.
Okay.
They didn't play it against. I just seen it one time. No one's ever played it against me.
Have you seen it, Zayn?
I played once against it at the beginning of the season. I was playing Quest Warrior, and then they played Portal, and I just couldn't beat it.
Really? Wow.
That's the one unfavorable interaction where, like, in the super long game, when you have one more X shot and he generates 2 minions a turn, it's just impossible.
The only
pretty
time I seen it
terrible.
was when I told you
That
my
is really
real life
bad.
friend. What they were playing against each other with Quest Warlock decks. That's the only time I seen it. Is they were trying to make. They were playing against each other with Quest Warlock, and they were like, "Oh, my Quest Warlock destroyed your Quest Warlock. My deck's way better. Like, this deck is sweet." And I'm like, "You guys are only playing against each other, and you're only playing against other Quest Warlocks." And then they venture out to the ladder,
That's
and then they realize it's a sad world
Yeah.
full of Quest Rogues.
All right. Well, why don't we wrap up? Kind of almost got into that hour 45 range. And for those other folks that wrote in some Q&A, I'll save them for next week, and we can read some of those. There's one that's like super long. I'm just trying to figure out how to paraphrase it from Lou. So Lou, if you're listening, I'll get to it next week. But fantastic show, guys. Why don't we do some shout outs here? The Rat, where can people find you?
You can find me at @TheRat on Twitter and the Rat on Twitch as well. Shout out to Splice. Shout out to the
Splice,
viewers
I think
of
that's
the
my
show.
Are you reading this? What are you doing?
No, I'm just sick, honestly.
Yeah,
Shout
he
out
has been
for
feeling
the
under
people
the
who get sick after conventions, or anti-shout out to people who are sick and then go to conventions.
What do you call the dream hack sickness? Because with the PAX one, they call it the pox, and things like that. I wonder what the dream hack
Well, I
of
don't
the
even know
lung.
if it's right now. I think I'm getting hit by the allergies, like I told you guys before the show. But if you're sick and you go to conventions, I understand, but you still suck. I would do the same thing.
All right, Zayn, how about you? Shout outs and where can people find you?
Shout outs just to the team, Tempo Storm. Find me on Twitter at TempoSaiyan or on Twitch, twitch.tv/JustSaiyanHS. That's about it.
Man, we didn't even get a chance to
shout-outs
talk to
to-
you. We didn't even get a chance to talk to you about the whole Tempo Storm and you guys 3 out of 4 at DreamHack, man. That was a freaking great DreamHack for you guys.
Oh yeah, shout outs to DreamHack for rigging the bracket. Perfect. It's really good.
Good stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Any other shout outs you got?
I guess shout out to Blizzard because as bad as it looks right now with the whole B-Dubs fiasco and the Wild thing, it seems like they're trying to explore new areas in Hearthstone. They're trying to build relationships, which means hopefully the game is going to be here in a decade or so, at least 5 years. Card games generally live a long time, and Blizzard kind of recognizes that. So, it doesn't look like they're taking the route of StarCraft and just letting it die and revamping to the point where no one wants to play it anymore. So,
Ow,
seems good.
man.
Ow. Hearthstone's their most successful esport. Makes a lot of sense. They did a great job on the set. I don't know if I've been on since the set happened, but
Oh, yeah.
the set's great.
The set's been
Meta
amazing.
is great.
Mhm.
It's
Just coming for the Rat, guys.
When the meta, I said the meta was good
Big deal.
last time.
Big
I said the meta
deal.
was good last time.
Yeah.
Like the meta's better than it was last time for sure. But I'm saying if the meta's great, we gotta find other things to complain about.
Yeah.
We'll always complain about something.
There's
right?
always
It's
something.
never
to complain about.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is, it's pretty, I wouldn't say as close as it gets, but it's pretty, it's definitely on the high end of things right now, and that's amazing. Lots of good work doing over there, and as much as we complain, we do need to give them kudos whenever things are going well, and this is definitely one of those times right now. So yeah, big shout out to Blizzard for that. I just get to round things out. Give a shout out to you guys for doing the show, the Rat and Zayn. Have you been on the show before? Did I have you on a while ago, long time ago, or is this the first time?
I haven't. I've been reluctant because I live on a busy street downtown, so it's kind of.
It's all good.
Sure.
Yeah.
He actually lives
Yeah.
above a firehouse, basically.
Well, welcome to the
Yeah.
show, man. I'm really happy to finally get you on here. Just
Yeah, it's
'cause
been a pleasure.
Been wanting to for a while, and everybody for watching. Of course, I want to give a shout out to, of course, our sponsor, or one of the sponsor, Ting, for making this show possible, as well as the Patreons. And a quick word from Ting: they're nationwide LTE access for T-Mobile and Sprint networks. And again, for those of you that are looking for a plan where there's no rate, there's no signed on for 2 years or anything like that, then Ting's the place for you, because you can leave at any time you want. You're just basically paying for all the data that you're using as you're going. And they're like #1 customer service too. So you can, whenever you call in, have a problem, you'll be talking to a person. It's kind of nice, because I'm tired of talking to these like answering machines and having to type 1 and you go here, type 3. So it's really, really nice when you do that. And if you go to value.ting.com, you can get a $25 off code, which is usually a free month on Ting. So definitely check them out. They're trying to do some more stuff in Hearthstone too. So, it's great to have more people supporting stuff.
And every one of their customer service members' voice sounds just like Saiyan, if that's something you're into.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
call in to listen to that
That's-
gravelly sweetness.
That's a huge ad
Gravelly.
promo right there. Yeah, definitely. Of course, all the patrons, if you guys want, if you guys enjoy the show, want to support the show, go to patreon.com/valuetown. And, any little bit it really helps the show, guys. Helps the show continue on. So you definitely consider that. And we've got all these cool milestones. We've been like $1 or $2 off this milestone for the last 2 weeks. So if you like milestone, you can make that happen, guys. Other than that, you can check out Deck of the Week a little bit later, and the VOD's going to be up
Something
on.
was missing.
Yeah, exactly, right? If you want to check out the VODs for the show, you can check them out at youtube.com/ChanManV for this episode, as well as all the previous ones from the weeks we've done them. But that's going to be it for Value Town this week, guys. So for the Rat, Just Saying, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next time.